So you're thinking of taking a solo trip to Amsterdam. Well, you're in luck because as someone who just did exactly that, I put together my ultimate guide of what to do, where to stay, and what to keep in mind before you go. A little bit of context. Amsterdam was my second international solo trip. My first one was a year ago. I went to Paris for over a month, which is wild to think about. I can work remotely within my business, so I kind of made it this like working slash exploring trip. But my trip to Amsterdam was 5 or 6 days. I took that time off of work and really dedicated all of it to unplugging and exploring. I think that's what I loved about Amsterdam is that it was big enough to explore. There was so much to do over the course of those few days, but it also didn't feel too big in that it was overwhelming or unmanageable, especially as someone who was kind of navigating it solo. I didn't necessarily have a specific reason as to why I picked Amsterdam. I think literally when I got back from Paris, my dad asked me, "So where are you going next?" And at the time said Amsterdam, and then the seed was planted. So that was really my thought process behind going, but I'm definitely glad I made the trip. First, let's talk about where I stayed. I looked at hotels, I looked at Airbnbs, and ultimately decided to stay at City Hub. I think they have 3 different locations, but this was obviously their Amsterdam location. It had good reviews, I did a ton of research, and ultimately was really happy with my decision. I don't think it's necessarily a hostel, but more so a pod hotel. So you have this little pod that is essentially yours. It's private. It's where you sleep. You can store your stuff. But then you do have more of those shared amenities like bathrooms, showers, public, I guess more so like lounge spaces. For me, I don't really mind shared amenities. Like I don't have an issue with that whatsoever. My biggest thing is I want to feel safe when I'm sleeping so that I can actually turn my brain off and go to bed. So that's why I opted for kind of an enclosed locked sleeping situation. I definitely think as I get more and more confident solo traveling internationally, I will explore more hostels, but this just sort of felt right for this trip. The pod itself is not only super clean, but actually more spacious than you think. I was a little worried because I'm nearly 5'11", so I didn't know if I was going to feel claustrophobic, and I really didn't at all. It comes with towels. It also comes with robes. And then instead of a key, you get this wristband that you use to tap in and out of like the pod hotel area as well as your room. A few other things to note that I was curious about before I stayed there are you do have the ability to store your luggage if you arrive before your check-in time. For some reason, this was something that was like stressing me out, but I got there a little bit early and I was able to store my stuff in a locker and then check in later in the evening. They do have shampoo, conditioner, body wash, and even Dyson hair dryers available for you to use. Whenever I'm in a shared bathroom situation, whether it's my gym here at home or kind of in this case at more so a hotel, I am definitely a person who wants to wear flip-flops. I did bring my own, which granted took up some space in my suitcase, but you could also purchase flip-flops or any other kind of things you might need when it comes to toiletries at the hotel. They had this little vending machine. I was actually deciding between 2 different hotel hostel situations, and I'm very glad I went with City Hub also because of the location. I feel like it was perfect in that it was a quick bike ride or walk to all of the other areas that I was interested in checking out versus the other one that I was considering was across the water, so I would have had to take a ferry, and I think that would not have been ideal at night by myself. So ultimately, I have no complaints with staying at City Hub. I honestly feel like I want to take another trip to one of the other countries where they have locations because I would definitely stay there again. The one thing I will say, and this is partially because it's Amsterdam, one night I did get woken up by my bunkmate, so like whoever was above me, because some things were going down up there. What can you say? That's part of the experience and journey that is traveling to Amsterdam, I guess. An interesting thing I have learned about myself when it comes to traveling is I like a plan, but I don't like an itinerary. I like to kind of formulate a list of the things I absolutely want to do, but unless I have to specifically book times, like you are never going to catch me writing out like a timed itinerary, because I also like the freedom of just being able to spontaneously decide to do something as well. And I also don't like that if you have a set itinerary and something doesn't go to plan, it can feel like a failure. And I'm not trying to set myself up for that. So I figured I would share my 5 must-dos while you're on your trip, and you can kind of figure out how to schedule them from there. You obviously must go to the Anne Frank house. Tickets for that do sell out pretty far in advance. So for me, as soon as I booked my flight, I booked my ticket for that. It's definitely a heavy experience, but I do feel like it is a must do on your trip. You obviously need to go to the Van Gogh Museum and the Rijksmuseum. Those were the main 2 that I went to, but there's also a ton of museums in that area. So if you do get stuck with some shittier weather, you can check more out as well. Every solo trip I go on, I like to get a photo strip souvenir. So that way I have this real-time kind of one-take opportunity to capture the moment. I did it in Paris, and then most recently now have done it in Amsterdam. I'm forgetting the name of the spot I went to, but I'll put it on the screen. The nice thing about this location is they had, I think, 3 different photo booths, so it went pretty quickly, and it honestly was like a 20-minute activity. And I like to turn this into a really cool kind of DIY souvenir where I frame it with my boarding pass. This has become a must-do for me because it is one of my favorite ways to display the trips that I've gone on. The third one might be considered cheating, but I do feel like when you're in Europe, it's sort of a no-brainer to visit other countries because you're so close, and it's usually pretty cheap. So I ended up taking a day trip over to Bruges, so that way I could check Belgium off of my country's bucket list. After looking at the prices, I ended up booking a day tour through Get Your Guide. I can put the exact one I booked in the description, even though it ended up being a full day experience, and honestly, the weather was terrible. I'm really glad I went. I liked honestly booking it through a company because they could just take care of the transportation for us, and it was a fun little solo adventure. The fourth one is coffees, pastries, and cafes. I mean, when in Amsterdam, you gotta try it all. I must confess, I did not end up getting a stroopwafel. For me, I get too much PTSD from like triathlon training with like, I forget what the honey stinger, like stroopwafel things. So I didn't get one of those, but believe me, I tried my fair share of pastries, baked goods, and coffees. Similarly to the itinerary thing, when I'm about to travel somewhere, I love to just save a ton of cafes and bakeries. So that way, when I'm walking around and I get hungry, I can just pull up my Google Maps and see what is nearby. But definitely make it a point to try as many as you can, because I'm still thinking about some of them. And finally, this one probably goes without saying, but you've got to get on a bike. Since being back in Boston, I definitely walk around and I am jealous and wish that this city was set up to be a little bit more bike friendly, because I think it is such a great way to commute and get around. That being said, I'm going to talk about a few things you should know before your trip, and one of them has to do with biking. So for me, I've obviously been dealing with some arthritis things paired with, I'm a confident biker, but I'm also like no Tour de France participant at this point. So I kind of waited until the end of my trip to bike for 2 reasons. One, I didn't want to screw up my knee and be uncomfortable for the entirety of my trip had I decided to bike on the first day. And secondly, biking in Amsterdam is an Olympic sport. Like, people are ruthless. There's lines everywhere and there's different stoplights. Like, it can feel a little bit daunting. So I wanted to have a good lay of the land understanding of like the geography of the city, as well as a better understanding of how the biking actually worked before I just got on one and went for it. I did end up renting a bike from City Hub, the pod hotel I was staying at, kind of within the last 36 hours of my trip. I ended up having a blast and now feel a lot more confident for the next time I go back to Amsterdam, because because I will. I'll definitely go back. The other thing I learned, obviously a big fan of taking public transportation in a different country. I think it's a cheap and easy way to get around. However, one thing I discovered is that you have to tap in and out, and that is how it calculates your fare. The first time I was going to get off, I was incredibly tired because I had taken a red eye, and B was just like, oh my God, I am totally in a foreign country right now. We arrived at my stop and I'm suddenly trying to get out, and I'm like looking around at everyone like, please help me, help me, help me. And so they were like, you have to push this button and tap to get out. So I do think it's worth it to watch a few videos on how it works ahead of time, just to give you a little bit more confidence. But also it's one of those where it's a good reminder that like, it's not that deep. And if you have to turn to someone and be like, how do I do this? People most of the time are willing to help, but just something to know. The last two things to know ahead of your trip: definitely book your museums ahead of time. Like I said, some of the really popular ones, especially if you are going during a busy season, can book out months in advance. So I would say as soon as you book your flights, get your tickets. And finally, I did something different for my phone this time. I actually used an eSIM. So in the past, I did something through my phone carrier and it ended up being a lot more expensive, and it's sort of a bigger flat fee. Versus an eSIM, you can buy a certain amount of credits. I think that's what they're called. And then if you run out, you can buy more, but you don't have to like pay this exorbitant flat fee up front. I think I'm going to make a TikTok on how to use the eSIM, how to get it set up, because at first I was a little worried it wasn't going to work, and it actually ended up being a lot simpler than I anticipated. I also have a discount for Airlo, which is the app I used. I thought it was great, that I will put on the screen here and in the description as well, to save you some money. The last part of this video, I thought I would give you some souvenir ideas. Also, because this TikTok that I made, ironically wearing this same sweatshirt, jacket, I don't really know what we would consider this, ended up doing pretty well and people loved the recommendations. So I figured I would include that in this video as well if you are preparing for your trip and want some ideas. I had to go run and get everything because I did not plan in advance as I was filming this. So these are the souvenirs I got. I will preface this by saying that I like to find practical items that I can use in my everyday life, so that way when I go and use them, or if someone comes over and they're like, oh my gosh, I love this, I can say like, oh my God, I got it on this trip, or it reminds me of kind of the different adventures I've gone on. First up, I got this fleece. I honestly got this because I brought one coat with me and it was almost to my ankles, and I thought if I try and bike in this coat, I will die. So I got this. I love the color. I think it's very bright and cheery, and honestly, I have worn it a lot since I've been back. Speaking of things I bought because of biking, I also got this Uniqlo bag. It's cute. It has the little stripe. I did include this in my March favorites video, but this was like €5 or something crazy. So I bought this to accompany me on my biking because it felt a little bit more practical for doing so. We can consider this a souvenir, but this is the photo strip that I got, and I did frame it with the boarding pass. I feel like the mat I'm using here is a little bit too light. It's kind of hard to see the boarding pass, so I'll probably switch this out, but this is probably my favorite souvenir from every single trip. I'm forgetting the name of the store, but there was a really cute home decor jewelry spot, and I got this cute little bow hook. I feel like I might put this in my bathroom for towels, but I just thought it was fun, cheerful, bright. You know, that's what we need. Speaking of stripes, I got this scarf as well. Oh, this is from the same spot as this sweater. It's called Noor, Noor. This is just a little triangle scarf that I can tie around as both an accessory, but maybe something to potentially keep me a little warm. I don't know how much it's actually doing that. I did get a magnet from the Van Gogh Museum because why not? I think I'm trying to like fill my fridge with memories and experiences, so it fits. On my trip to Belgium, I didn't really know what I wanted to get because I was just like, okay, I don't need like a magnet of the flag of Belgium. I thought the colors were cool, and I ended up actually climbing this. But now that I hold it up, I'm sort of realizing it kind of looks phallic. I don't know if that's just me or yeah, but it's cute and it makes me laugh when I do use it. And finally, there was a cute little jewelry store that I went to and got one pair of earrings, and then I loved them so much, so I went back and got two more. They were pretty reasonable, and I think they're so cute. This is only one of the sets, but they're these little pearl heart earrings. I've been wearing them nonstop. And I'm obsessed. I've really been on an earring kick. I got rings when I went to Paris, so I thought it was only fitting to get sort of earrings for this trip. That is the full haul of all of the fun little souvenirs I got in Amsterdam. So hopefully this helps if you are about to take a trip. If you have any more questions or need more recommendations, let me know because I would be happy to share them with you. I'll put a video here of what I think you might enjoy watching next, and I will see you in the next one.